Tonight, we move on to these new details in the case of Shanquella Robinson after WCNC Charlotte obtained more than 100 pages of newly released documents from the FBI.
While much of the information remains redacted, it does offer some insight into what investigators were hoping to learn.
WCNC Charlotte's anchor Kaylin Hagwood has been combing through those pages. Joining us in the studio, of course, now. Kaylin, big question here is what stands out to you?
Well, while these documents do provide some insight into the FBI's investigation, they also raise questions on what's not being shared, with heavy redactions and more than 200 pages removed. It was supposed to be a friend's getaway to Cabo San Lucas in October 2022, but 25-year-old Shanquella Robinson never made it home. Investigators say her 6 travel mates, now dubbed as the Cabo Six, initially told Robinson's family she may have died from alcohol poisoning. But according to documents WCNC Charlotte obtained, an autopsy in Mexico revealed a different story: severe spinal and neck trauma. Robinson's dad, Bernard, says the pain is still raw.
It just hurt to the core that these 6 individuals out here came back to the United States soil, walking around here like they ain't did nothing.
Newly released FBI documents show that in early 2023, federal agents contacted a Mexican prosecutor with 11 specific questions. They wanted to know who owned the villa where Robinson died, whether surveillance video existed, if there were 911 recordings, and what medical records were available. The FBI outreach happened right around when Mexican officials announced they were searching for a suspect. The documents confirm an arrest warrant was issued, though the suspect's name remains sealed. Just one of hundreds of pages redacted or removed from the public's view.
So what was on the pages? No one in this world who got kids and daughters will want this done to their child and have to deal with this not knowing what happened and why it happened.
The documents also show the FBI conducted interviews after Robinson's death. One person told agents the group had been drinking heavily and had placed Robinson in a shower, trying to help her sober up. One person in the group was reportedly so distraught they couldn't eat or sleep. Well, I have reached out to the FBI for clarification on why the pages were so heavily redacted or removed. As for where the case stands now, 4 of the 6 friends filed motions to dismiss, saying the case belongs in Mexico. Robinson's mother is also suing the Cabo Six, the FBI, and the State Department, seeking $100 million in damages. There are no charges in the U.S. Of course, as we continue to get updates in this story, you can find the latest information and follow the timeline over the years inside the WCNC Charlotte mobile app.
Wow. All right, Kaylin, thank you so much for diving into those documents for us tonight.
October 29th, 2022, Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. A 25-year-old woman lies dying in a luxury villa. Her friends tell paramedics she drank too much. Way too much. But when the autopsy results came back, they revealed something completely different. Something that would turn this vacation into a murder investigation. Before we continue, I want to send my deepest condolences to Shanquella Robinson's family, to her mother, Salamandra, and everyone who loved her. Your strength in seeking justice is truly inspiring. Shanquella's life mattered, and her story deserves to be told. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from today. Her name was Shanquella Robinson, 25 years old. A successful businesswoman from Charlotte, North Carolina. She wasn't just getting by, she was thriving. Shanquella had built her own empire in the beauty industry. She was a talented hairstylist who turned her passion into profit. She owned not 1, but 2 businesses. Exquisite Kids specialized in children's hair braiding. Exquisite Boutique was her women's fashion line. Both were doing well, really well. Shanquella was the kind of person who made things happen. But there was one thing missing from her success story. She had never traveled outside the United States. Never seen the world beyond Charlotte. When her friends invited her to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, she was over the moon. This was going to be her first international trip, her first taste of adventure. She had no idea that the people she trusted most were about to betray her in the most horrific way possible. What happened next would expose a level of deception So calculated, so cold, it still shocks investigators today. So how did Shanquella end up with this group? These weren't her closest friends. They were more like acquaintances, people she knew through social circles in Charlotte. 6 individuals who would later be called the Cabo Six. The group wasn't tight-knit. They were just people who ran in similar crowds. But when the idea of a luxury vacation came up, everyone was interested. Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. A beautiful resort town. Crystal blue waters. Perfect weather. And they found the ideal place to stay. A luxury villa. Not some basic hotel room. We're talking about a high-end rental property. The kind of place you see on Instagram. The kind of place that costs serious money. Everyone was excited. Shanquella was posting about it. Her social media showed genuine happiness, pure anticipation. But here's what's troubling. Some of the group members, they weren't posting the same way. Their energy was different. Looking back now, there were warning signs Shanquella never saw coming. October 28, 2022, Shanquella's last day in Charlotte. She called her mother that morning, texted her friends. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed perfect. The flight to Cabo San Lucas went smoothly. No issues, no drama. Just 7 young people heading to paradise for what should have been an amazing weekend. They landed in Mexico, got their transportation to the villa, and when they arrived, the place was everything they expected. Luxury, privacy, the perfect setting for a getaway. Shanquella was living her dream. Her first international trip was starting exactly how she hoped it would. But here's what makes this so heartbreaking. The timeline investigators later put together. It shows that within 18 hours of landing in Mexico, Shanquella would be dead. What happened that first night? That's where the stories start falling apart. The group members, they all have different versions of events. Some say they went out to dinner. Others say they stayed in. Some say Shanquella was drinking. Others say she wasn't. Medical records would later show something interesting. Timeline discrepancies, things that don't add up. Injuries that happened hours before anyone called for help. But at the time, nobody knew what was really going on. The group was keeping secrets, big secrets, and here's the most chilling part. Someone was recording everything that happened next. October 29th, the next afternoon, 2:13 p.m. to be exact. A doctor from the American Medical Center gets an urgent call. Someone at a luxury villa needs medical help. Immediately. When he arrives, he finds Shanquella in terrible condition. She's disoriented, not responding to questions properly, severely dehydrated. Her friends are standing around, and they all have the same explanation. She drank too much last night. Way too much. The doctor examines her carefully. This doesn't look like a typical hangover. This looks serious. Really serious. He tells the group she needs to go to the hospital. Right now. But here's where things get strange. They refuse. They insist she can be treated right there in the villa. The doctor is concerned. He's seen alcohol poisoning before, and something about this doesn't feel right. But he has no idea. What really caused Shanquella's condition had nothing to do with drinking. 1 hour later, everything changes. Shanquella starts having a seizure. Not just any seizure, a tonic-clonic seizure. Her whole body is convulsing. She's struggling to breathe. This is a medical emergency. The friends finally call for paramedics. When they arrive, they immediately start working on her. CPR, adrenaline injections. They try everything. Defibrillation, advanced life support. These paramedics are fighting to save her life. But it's too late. At 5:57 p.m. That's her name. Shanquella Robinson is pronounced dead. Less than 24 hours after landing in paradise, a young woman with everything to live for is gone. And here's what makes this even more tragic. While paramedics were trying to save her life, evidence that could have explained what really happened was already being compromised. But the real truth was already spreading online. The group has their story ready, all 6 of them. Save explanation, sane details. Shanquella died from alcohol poisoning. She drank too much. It was a tragic accident. Nothing more. They call Shanquella's family back in Charlotte. Her mother, Salamandra, gets the devastating news. Her daughter is dead. But from the very first phone call, something doesn't feel right. The explanation doesn't match the daughter she knows. Shanquella wasn't a heavy drinker. She was responsible. She was careful. And the way her friends are telling the story, it sounds rehearsed. Like they all agreed on what to say before they made the call. A mother's instincts are powerful. And Shanquella Robinson knew. Her daughter's friends were lying. The results came back. And they changed everything. Everything the friends had said was a lie. Cause of death? Not alcohol poisoning. Not even close. Shanquella Robinson died from a severe spinal cord injury. A broken neck. The kind of trauma that doesn't happen from drinking too much. The kind of trauma that happens from violence. But that wasn't all. The medical examiner found visible signs of assault all over her body. A contusion on her head. Bruises covering her face. One eye was swollen shut. Her lip was busted open. These were injuries from falling down drunk. These were injuries from being attacked. The toxicology report? No evidence of alcohol poisoning. None. The friends had lied about everything. Every single detail of their story was false. The medical examiner's conclusion was clear. Definitive. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't alcohol poisoning. This was murder. Now investigators started looking closer at the group's statements, and that's when everything fell apart. Their stories had holes. Fake holes. Each person told investigators something slightly different. The timeline didn't match. Who was where, when? Nobody could keep their story straight. Some said Shanquella was fine at dinner. Others said she never made it to dinner. Some said Shanquella was drinking heavily. Others said she barely touched alcohol. But here's what was really damaging. Digital evidence showed the group had been communicating with each other before talking to police. Text messages, phone calls. They were coordinating their stories, making sure everyone said the same thing. Investigators found evidence of planning, evidence of cover-up, evidence that this group knew exactly what had happened to Shanquella, and they were working together to hide it. Mexican authorities were about to make their move. Mexican authorities moved fast, really fast. They classified Shanquella's death as a homicide. Not an accident, not alcohol poisoning. Murder. Within weeks they issued an arrest warrant. But not for all 6 friends. For one specific person. The direct aggressor. The person who actually killed Shanquella Robinson. Mexican investigators had identified the primary suspect from the group. Now here's where things get complicated. The suspect was back in the United States, safe on American soil. Mexico wanted them extradited, sent back to face murder charges. But extradition between countries, that's not simple, that's not fast. International legal processes are messy. There are treaties, procedures, diplomatic protocols. And while all of this red tape was being sorted out, the person who killed Shanquella was walking free in America. The FBI got involved. Federal agents launched their own investigation. This was now an international incident. An American citizen murdered in Mexico. But the FBI faced serious challenges. Evidence collection was a nightmare. The crime scene was in another country. Witnesses were scattered across different states. Some were cooperating, others weren't, and time was working against them. The longer an investigation takes, the harder it becomes to build a solid cue. They claimed they couldn't prove a federal crime had been committed. QQQ case was too weak to take to court. But here's what made this decision even more controversial. There were discrepancies between the Mexican autopsy and what American investigators found. Why? Because Shanquella's body had been embalmed before the second examination. Crucial evidence had been compromised. Legal experts were divided. Some said the prosecutors were right to be cautious. Others said they gave up too easily, that they should have tried harder to get justice for Shanquella. The Robinson family was devastated. Their daughter was dead. They had video evidence of an assault. They had an autopsy showing murder. But no one would be held accountable. But the Robinson family refused to give up. Shanquella Robinson wasn't going to let this go. Not her daughter, not like this. She became a fierce advocate for justice, speaking out publicly, demanding answers, keeping Shanquella's story alive. Her legal team didn't give up either. They explored every option: civil lawsuits against the group members, wrongful death claims. If the criminal justice system wouldn't hold these people accountable, maybe the civil courts would. They reached out to government officials, senators, congresspeople, asking for diplomatic intervention, requesting that the United States government pressure Mexico to continue pursuing the case. This was bigger than just one family's tragedy. This was about international cooperation in fighting crime. The community rallied around the Robinson family. Activists organized. Social media campaigns spread awareness. Hashtags demanding justice for Shanquella went viral. People who had never met her were fighting for her memory.
The State Department and the FBI want a court to dismiss a lawsuit from the family of Shanquella Robinson. She's the Charlotte woman who mysteriously died during a 2022 trip to Cabo, Mexico with a group of friends. Well, her loved ones are suing the two agencies as well as the so-called Cabo Six, the people accused of killing Robinson in Mexico. The two groups argue the court doesn't have jurisdiction over the claims Robinson's family is making. Investigators have not made any arrests in her death.
So where does this case stand today? The truth is heartbreaking. No arrests have been made. Not in the United States. Not in Mexico. The people who killed Shanquella Robinson are still walking free. The Mexican arrest warrant is still active, but that doesn't mean much if the suspect won't be extradited. And right now, there's no movement on that front. Legal battles continue. The Robinson family keeps pushing through the courts. Public pressure campaigns haven't stopped. Social media justice movements keep sharing Shanquella's story. Her name trends regularly on Twitter. People refuse to forget. But after more than 2 years, justice still feels far away.